So I'm going to share my desktop, and you should see my desktop appear in a moment or so. So before I begin, I just want to let you know much of the content we're going to talk about is displayed in this graphic that you see on the screen, which we call a concept map. And we will make this available to all of you. We'll send an email with a link to this after the webinar is over. So you'll have time to sort of peruse it on your own. But you'll see that each sort of shape is a concept. And then if you hold your mouse over the concept, icons will appear. And you can click on them for more information. So for example, the little book icon displays attached resources. In this case, it's a handout on applying to graduate school, the differences between the grad and the undergrad experience. So I just encourage you to read through the associated handouts that are attached to these concepts after the webinar is over. So I want to start out by talking about the difference between the undergraduate and the graduate experience. So first off, funding-wise, in general, they pay you. In the STEM disciplines, science, technology, engineering, and math, the majority of students receive full tuition support, plus a small stipend for living expenses, through a variety of funding sources, and we'll discuss some of those possible funding sources in a little bit. But generally speaking, you should not have to incur debt to complete a graduate degree in a STEM field. Another major difference is that as a graduate student, your focus will be on research rather than just completing coursework and taking exams as it might have been when you were an undergraduate. So you will really be focused on your own thesis or dissertation project and really building your research skills. And the faculty advisor is a very important piece. You are expected to identify a faculty advisor. And so part of the graduate application process is identifying a faculty member whose research interests you and with whom you'd like to work. This faculty member can then be your sponsor or advocate during the application process. And you can, of course, you can still switch advisors once you actually enroll, but it's really not advisable to apply to a program blind without having identified one or two faculty members whose research interests align with your own, or to apply to a program where none of the faculty really seem to align with your interests. Another difference is class size. So even at a large institution, generally graduate courses will be small seminars focused on discussion and group work. So that may differ from your undergraduate experience depending on the type of institution that you attended. And then finally, independence. So as a graduate student, much of your time will be unstructured, and it will really be up to you to make internal deadlines and to complete necessary tasks. So you are really your own best advocate in graduate school, and it is expected of you that you will actively seek out help and advice and mentoring as you need it. So that said, we're going to move on to the how to get paid to go to graduate school topic, and I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Chris Cash, who's going to start out by talking about fixed funding.
Great, thank you, Liz. So fixed funding. Fixed funding would be the funding that's site-specific, meaning it's tied to a specific college or university. A good example of these, and they're the most common methods of graduate school support, which would be teaching assistantships and research assistantships. In a teaching assistantship or a TA, you'd be required to assist a professor in teaching an undergraduate level course. For example, you may be in charge of teaching lab sections. You may hold office hours, help answer questions, or help grade exams. A research assistantship, or RA, is where you'd assist a faculty member in their research project, perhaps by collecting data, running experiments, analyzing data, and even participating in publishing findings. These are positions offered by the university you are attending, and the pay usually covers tuition and provides a small living allowance. And usually with these positions, there's a requirement of about 20 hours of work per week. Other types of fixed support would be departmental fellowships. A good example of the departmental fellowships are the IGERT traineeships. That acronym stands for Integrative Graduate Education and Research Traineeships. And these are programs funded by the National Science Foundation. There are about 200 located at colleges and universities nationwide, all with a focus on interdisciplinary, team-based graduate education. They're funded at over $30,000 a year, along with support for tuition and fees. IGERTs are interdisciplinary doctoral degree programs. And to give you an example, there's the REACH IGERT, which is formerly known as the Biological Invasions IGERT at the University of California, Davis, and Liv is showing you some pictures here. And at this IGERT, students studied various types of invasive species in Davis, ranging from plant to marine-based species. This cohort brings together students across a variety of the environmental sciences, as well as even bringing into the team a history major who was documenting the history of biological invasions in the state, and a communications major assisting with outreach and public policy. There's lots of, the IGERTs vary quite dramatically. Other types of topics include robotics, wind technology, genomics, and material sciences, just to name a few. And all of these can be searched for by discipline on our website. Also, faculty may offer support similar to IGERT under their personal research grants, which you would learn about as you go through the application process for a given department. So with that, I'll pass it over to Liv to talk about some portable funding options.
Great. So in contrast to the fixed funding, portable funding is a funding that you can take with you to most colleges or universities. And so this funding gives you a bit more freedom than the fixed funding, since you can generally take it anywhere and work on, whatever research project you choose. So one example of this type of fellowship is the National Science Foundation's Graduate Researcher Fellowship. And this is one of the largest fellowships, both in terms of the number of fellowships awarded each year and sort of its prestige. It provides $30,000 annual stipend plus a $12,000 cost of living allowance and tuition coverage. And the deadlines for this are very early in the fall, and the deadlines vary a bit based on discipline. But if you are an undergraduate and you're planning to go straight to graduate school, the fall right after you graduate, you would want to be applying early in the fall of your senior year. So coming right up here, September, October, November. NASA is also another source of fellowships, and a lot of the times people think of NASA as being strictly engineering or computer science, and while it certainly is heavy in those disciplines, those of you that are logged on today that are interested in the geosciences, there are certainly research opportunities with NASA, especially related to climate change and atmospheric sciences. So anyway, these again, the stipend again ranges around $30,000 for NASA, and the NASA fellowships are a bit unique in that they involve pairing the student with a NASA mentor at a NASA center. So the student spends the academic year working on campus with your faculty advisor, and then you would go for about 8 to 10 weeks during the summer to a NASA center where you would have a paid internship where you work one-on-one with a NASA scientist. You're still working on research that's directly relevant to your master's thesis or your dissertation. You can apply via the OSSI website. OSSI stands for One Stop Shop Initiative. And one other thing, while I show you some pictures of some former fellowship recipients, is if you are actively looking for funding, if you will be enrolled in graduate school starting September this year, and you're looking for funding, NASA currently has an open fellowship application period. And the deadline is the 26th, which is not this Friday, but next Friday. If you're interested in that, I would encourage you to send me an email, and I would be glad to send you application steps and information to help you get that application completed. And then there are many others, like tons and tons of other fellowship opportunities. And we'll demonstrate some searches on our website, pathwaystoscience.org. And I would encourage you to apply to many. The worst thing that can happen is that you get turned down. I mean, well, that could happen, but you could also have to turn someone else down. So put your hat in. And The other thing is, as you're investigating graduate school, you should also keep in mind that professional development support is really important. So I encourage you to see what types of support programs are available on campus. And remember that even if the department doesn't offer something, there may be something campus-wide that's available. So just some examples of programs that you might look for, or just examples of how programs can work. One is the AGEP. AGEP stands for Alliance for Graduate Education and the Professoriate. It's a support program that involves alliances of institutions, and the sort of activities and support that these alliances offer include things like social activities and professional development activities like dissertation workshops, workshops on negotiating job interviews, salaries as you prepare to graduate with your degree. They also offer modest financial support, for example, to travel to a conference to present your work, or to begin networking with new colleagues and researchers. And they can even help with the job search as you're moving on from grad school to a postdoc position or to a professional position. And as you can see, there are tons of institutions that are involved in these alliances. Another example of a professional development program is MS-PhDs, and that stands for Minorities Striving and Pursuing Higher Degrees of Success in Earth System Science. And this program brings students from many different organizations. Sorry, guys. From many different institutions all together in 3 different phases of activities over about 2.5 years. So this program provides travel support to go to conferences, and it provides mini workshops on things like networking with other researchers, giving presentations, giving that elevator speech, how to do a poster session at a conference. And actually both of our guest speakers are alumni from the MS-PhDs program, so they may touch on their experience with this program during their presentations. And again, there are many other professional development programs out there. These are just a couple of examples. And so I just want to say, as you're researching these options, remember that each type of fellowship brings its own benefits, and often a mixed source of funding is really the best thing for a student. So for example, if you think you really want to teach in the future, you should definitely try to get a TA, the teaching assistant position, so that you can practice your teaching skills while you're a student, and you have them down pat when you become a professor. And also, an RA, a research assistant position, may be really valuable because you are working on a faculty member's funded project, and as such, that faculty member is really invested in you. On the other hand, the portable funding fellowships that we talked about can be very useful at times, especially if you need some flexibility. For example, you really need to focus on your research without the extra added responsibilities of a TA or an RA position. For example, perhaps when you're, really diving into the dissertation writing, you may want to have that that devoted attention to your own research. So keep the big picture in mind, and you can also keep a lookout for funding that is deferrable. So that means you could accept the award now, but wait a year to draw on the funds. And you can also keep an eye out for funding that might possibly be stackable, which means you could simultaneously draw on 2 different funding sources. Okay, so I'm going to pass it off to Chris again for how to apply.
Great, thanks, Liv. So how to apply? Basically, the best, most basic way to get ready for applying to graduate school and fellowships, which many aspects happen simultaneously, is to create a timeline to keep you organized and reminded of which deadlines are fast approaching. So as Liv said, most deadlines for the portable fellowships are in the fall. So if you're applying your senior year of your undergraduate degree, you need to be starting this process in August, very shortly. I want to suggest that you really take a look at the Committee for Institutional Cooperation's, or CIC, their handout. Their timeline is really helpful and detailed. Liv is going to open that for you for a visual. It provides you with a month-by-month checklist for each step, which is really very nice to see and use. So keeping this in mind, you need to start by searching for a program, of course. So we have 2 very helpful handouts that outline the questions you should be thinking about asking when you're applying to school. Another resource we strongly urge you to take advantage of is our online sign-up form from our homepage, pathwaystoscience.org. If you sign up, it takes about 5 minutes, and you'll immediately be sent a list of resources that match your academic interests. But additionally, we'll send you periodic updates from us, about 4 per year, we don't inundate you, about opportunities and resources and friendly reminders, such as warnings about upcoming fellowship deadlines. We're also contacted by faculty who are searching for students to recruit to their programs, and we would put them in contact with students in our directory with the disciplinary background they're seeking to recruit. So if you want to receive these types of resources and opportunities, we'd encourage you to complete our sign-up form at your leisure, or tonight. So probably our best online research is our searchable database. Also on the homepage, you would select the Search Over 1,500 Programs tab. And to do this, to be helpful, we'll just give you a quick couple of searches. Selecting the user group graduate student, PhD, and then selecting the discipline Marine Sciences and Oceanography. It would bring you to 26 links. This would be to various programs that would include IGERTS, portable scholarships, and even post-bac opportunities like GeoCore, which is, if it's a program that you're not aware of or haven't heard of before, I would encourage you to look at that if post-bac is something you're considering too. So each program in the list brings you to a program overview that includes a link to each program's website, and also contact information for each program. So that's just a really quick search. You can also search by institution, discipline, geographic location, and refine your search in a number of ways. So I thought it would be helpful to try an advanced search, also using the user group graduate student. But this time you could really refine your search by just selecting something like portable funding only. Again, using marine sciences and oceanography as a discipline. The next list that will match this query, what I came up with, is there was only 4 matches. So you've narrowed your search down quite a bit. We encourage you to play around with the search functions in a variety of ways. And Melanie and Leonard will both share some different marine sciences funding resources that they've had in their past, and we'll have those available later for you online. So that just wanted to give you a quick overview of our website. So back to finding a program. So once you've found a program that you're interested in, with any school, you really need to familiarize yourself with the department to which you're applying. You need to research the faculty members that you may want to work with. Make sure you would be willing to work with more than one person in a given department. Faculty are often transitioning due to research or sabbaticals, et cetera. So it's important you show your willingness to work with multiple people. When you find a department you feel is a good fit, ask to visit. Many schools have support to bring in interested candidates, which will give you the opportunity to see and meet potential faculty, but also meet current graduate students. Are they happy? Are they getting published? Could you see yourself there for 6 years or more? This is also the time to be starting a dialogue about how you will be supported through your entire degree. If you do not receive any fellowships or external fellowships, what type of departmental funding will be supporting you? And what are the expectations associated with your support? You definitely do not want to be sending in a blind application, which Liv outlined at the beginning of the webinar. You need to have a faculty advisor in place prior to submitting your application. So again, in August, in addition to starting the search for your program and contacting programs that interest you, you want to start drafting your personal statement and reviewing and planning when to take the GREs, or the Graduate Education Records. Many, but not all, graduate schools require the GRE, and preparation is key. GRE.org is an excellent website with free resources. It also includes information on where to find test fee waivers if you're a student needing that type of support. Going back to our CIC timeline checklist, it's suggested you start preparing in August, but plan on taking the GRE by October. In September, you'll want to be reviewing and rewriting your personal statement. Use your campus resources like your writing centers, use your peers, your mentors. Your personal statement is very important, so please make sure to have many sets of eyes reviewing your statement again and again. And please use our handout. We have a handout writing strong essays and personal statements available for more tips for you. Also, again in September, this is when you should be applying for your portable fellowships and scholarships. Most have deadlines in October or early November for the following academic year. So a fall of 2013 application is for fall 2014 funding. We're frequently contacted by students in the winter looking for fellowships and scholarships for the upcoming fall, and in most cases it's too late. You really need to be organized and applying early for all funding possible in early fall, and we cannot stress this enough. So going along through October, November, December, you should be taking the GRE, preferably in October, asking for letters of recommendation, and submitting your applications. Making sure you're choosing someone who will write you a good letter of recommendation. When you do have that person selected, supply them with your resume and supporting documents which highlight the work you've done in their class or research program. You really want to make it as easy as possible for them to give you the best letter possible. This includes giving your letter writer lots of lead time. Also, follow up. In most cases, you can see online if your letter's been submitted. So pleasant but persistent reminders are good and often necessary. Faculty are busy, but they understand the importance of your letter. So again, pleasant but persistent reminders are okay. So here again, seeing our supporting documents with methods on how to go about cultivating strong letters of reference or recommendation. When you do learn of your acceptance status, make sure to follow up and thank people who wrote you for your letters of recommendation. They want to know the outcome, and these are the same people you'll be asking again in the future for letters of support. And they are more likely to go the extra mile if you're courteous and keep them in the loop about all of your academic milestones. And after you submit your application, follow up with the department to make sure your application was received. This really is the type of conduct that will make sure you stand out as a serious applicant, and really just something you need to do to make sure everything's been done. So please use all the supporting documents we've shown you that are on our website. They're in our resources toolbox. They give you more tips on writing personal statements, securing good letters of recommendation, and what to expect in graduate school, as well as the CIC packet with timeline and checklists. We'll be sending you a link to all of our materials following our presentation tonight, and Liv is showing you where you can find those on our website. But if you have any questions about what you've heard so far, we'll be taking them at the end, so please write them in the chat box. So if you don't have time to get to them, we can get to your questions and follow up with you in the next few days. So that being said, we are fortunate to have two speakers tonight, Melanie Harrison and Leonard Pace, who are to speak with you about their work, their experiences in the field, and their experiences securing funding and applying to graduate school. So at this time, I would like to introduce Melanie Harrison, who's a water quality specialist at NOAA's National Marine Fisheries Service.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is approximately 4:30 on the West Coast, probably evening time and dinner time for you guys, but I'm really excited about the opportunity that IBP participation has provided me to talk to you all about funding opportunities, particularly focused on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Similar to what Chris talked about, there are many different opportunities that are out there for graduate students as well as undergraduates, and preparation is always key. And the information that IBP has provided today is really heavily focused on the National Science Foundation as well as the NASA programs. And I wanted to focus on some of the great programs, fellowships, scholarships, and grants that are provided by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, especially because so many of you guys signed up and are in the geosciences, and we'd love to have you a part of the organization. We can move to the next slide.
There we go. Is that too zoomed out? Is that better?
Perfect. So I wanted to just give a brief overview of some of my funding experiences in the past, and really the path that I've taken to navigate this maze of funding opportunities that are out there, and to piggyback on what Liz talked about earlier. For geosciences, scientists and engineers in technology and mathematics, applying and going to graduate school should really, really be a free ride. There are so many great opportunities out there. STEM right now is a very hot topic, and any opportunity to become a part of a really growing field of interest, you guys should take advantage of. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the programs that I've been involved in. You may have heard of some of those. You may have been a part of those. And hopefully you could take advantage of some of the ones that I'm going to talk about today. So I started in undergrad as in the National Science Foundation Research Education for Undergraduate program. This program was actually conducted out of the Carey Institute for Ecosystem Studies. Many of you know that there are various RAU programs across the country, and they are really very diverse in terms of the fields and the topics that they focus on. And this RAU in particular really focuses on ecology and environmental sciences. So that was one of the very first internship research experiences for me as an undergraduate. And I had the opportunity to actually publish under this scholarship programs, and that was great for me, and also meet a number of different individuals who are now my colleagues in the field of environmental science as well as water quality. When I moved to graduate school, there were many opportunities that were out there, but one of the best opportunities, and one that Liv has talked about earlier, was the National Science Foundation funded Integrated Graduate Research Traineeship Program. It was an IGRT program out of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. This program was amazing to me because the focus was on water in the urban environment, and I love that. It really talks about the intersection and merging of various fields of hydrology, computer modeling, environmental science, and also economics. And so this program was really focused on training scientists to work collaboratively and in a multidisciplinary areas. And so if you guys out there and ladies out there that are really interested in the intersection of various fields or topics, I implore you to look into the IGRT program. It's a great program again, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the intricacies of the program later in terms of funding and other opportunities under that program. And next, one of the other programs that I participated in was funded by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. This program funded my last 2 years of a PhD program, an absolutely amazing program with very few participants and applications or applicants applying to the program. And we see so few every year. I encourage you, once you leave this site or WebEx, to go and take a look at this program, because we really need great young scientists who want to be a part of NOAA. I'll talk a little bit more about this program as well, but it is similar to the IGRT program, but many different dimensions. And so, for example, you may sign a contract with NOAA and you transition to a full-term employment with the organization. You really can't get any better than that. So, if you're interested in NOAA and some of the environmental, ocean, and atmospheric work and research that's going on at the organization, again, I implore you to take a look at our website. If we can move to the next slide. So many folks who know about NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, really always focus on the National Weather Service. I get a lot of migrate weather service information through my iPhone from the National Weather Service, but when you talk about the other line offices in NOAA and all the work that they do in terms of ocean and atmospheric work or science or research, there are many different dimensions. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of those other line offices in hopes that individuals who are tuning into this WebEx, if they didn't know about NOAA now, they will. And there are many different opportunities to get engaged and get involved in some of the line offices. There are 7 line offices within NOAA, and these line offices are separate from some of the programs that also are within NOAA. However, I'm just going to focus today on the line offices. There is the Marine and Aviation Operations, and we have many different acronyms in NOAA, so I wanted to put those up there for you. There's the National Oceanic, the National Ocean Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and this is the line office that I am a part of. There's also the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, the National Weather Service, of course, the National Environmental Satellite Data and Information Service, as well as Program Planning and Integration. We can move to the next slide. But where do you go on the NOAA website to really find a one-stop shop for all of your funding needs, such as scholarships and fellowships and grant opportunities for undergraduates? The Office of Education, which is a line office within NOAA programs, is really a one-stop shop for you to get everything that you need. And 3 of the major programs are the Educational Partnership Program. Now, this is a program that is specifically dedicated to undergraduate scholarships. And the undergraduate scholarship programs provides an opportunity for rising juniors to study disciplines related to NOAA mission. And that description is pretty broad, but it's good because it means that you have the opportunity to apply to this program and then kind of seek out some of the things or research or topics that you would like to potentially work on within the NOAA organization. The second is the Ernest F. Halling Scholarship Program. And this program is dedicated to increasing graduate training in oceanic and atmospheric science, research, technology, and education, and really foster a multidisciplinary training opportunities. This, again, is a program that's really dedicated to training our undergraduates, much like the IGERT program that is dedicated to really training graduate students in terms of thinking multidisciplinary. And then finally, the Graduate Scientist Program, and this is a program that I talked about, a program that I was involved in as a graduate student. And that young lady down at the bottom of the page is a meteorologist, and her name is Nelsie Ramos, Dr. Nelsie Ramos, and she has an amazing but very scary job of flying into hurricanes and thunderstorms down in Miami to get the data that we need in order to feed into our National Weather Service data source information. So there are many different opportunities out there, particularly within NOAA, Office of Education, for undergraduate as well as graduate students. Next slide, please. And then we have the Dr. Nancy Foster Scholarship Program. And again, it's one of those programs that is separate from the line offices division, but really dedicated to having graduate level research in oceanography, marine biology, or maritime archaeology. So if you're interested in any of those topics, I, again, implore you to visit the website for Dr. Nancy Foster on the NOAA website. Next slide, please. There's also the Sea Grant program, and there are 2 fellowships within the Sea Grant program, the John A. Knaus Marine Policy Fellowship, as well as the NOAA Fisheries Graduate Fellowship programs. And these programs really focus on the intersection between policy and research. And so if you're interested in that and working on the Hill, please feel free to get more information about these fellowships on the Sea Grant program website. Next slide, please. Also, I thought it would be really nice for students to see that there are many different opportunities out there to interact and engage some of our researchers through the Office of Ocean Exploration and the Ocean Careers to Inspire Another Generation of Explorers. So if you have some time, please feel free to go to that website and connect with many of the researchers that are doing really great work in NOAA's Office of Ocean Exploration. Next page, please. Liv talked earlier about the National Science Foundation, IGERT, and so I'm going to move through this slide, and this slide is here for your reference, but it is, again, a really great program. Next slide, please. And then finally, some of the tips that I think are successful for applying to funding programs, which is really, I've thought about kind of building a scientific brand. So you have Apple, a well-known brand that thinks about different types of strategies, who, what, when, and where, and how to identify how they're going to get and be successful in the field of technology. It's the same for science. You've got to develop a plan. You have to establish a solid foundation in the field to increase your probability of success through publication, maybe joining organizations. Identify your top funding opportunities to maximize and minimize your risk. Identify all the important resources that you need and really have a focused strategy. And the bottom line is don't procrastinate. Just do it. But preparation is always key. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Fantastic. This time now we're going to pass it over to Leonard Pace, who is the Science Program Coordinator at the Schmidt Ocean Institute.
All right, everybody. My name is Leonard Pace, and I am really excited to chat with you all today about my career and give you some ideas on places to go and things to look for funding opportunities in marine and environmental science. I'm currently the Science Program Coordinator for the Schmidt Ocean Institute, and the picture you're seeing in the top is our ship, the Falkor, and we fund scientists to come out on board the ship and conduct their science. It is a nonprofit vessel that was refitted by Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, and he donated it to science. And it's an opportunity, it's a way for scientists to get out and get their science done. Prior to that, I worked for the National Science Foundation in the geoscience office, where I was working with the ship below that, the JOIDES Resolution, and we were funding scientists to go out on that ship. And that ship is another one of NSF's contributions to science, where scientists will come out on that ship and conduct drilling research. They'll come out and the ship will find a station and drill deep into the Earth's core and collect core samples that are used for prehistoric dating, paleohistory, paleoclimate work. And prior to that, I contracted for a number of companies in and around the D.C. area. One was BAE Systems, and I was working at that time for the Customs and Border Protection. And prior to that, I was working for NOAA in the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Office, which was housed in Sea Grant. And just before that, I completed a John A. Knaus Fellowship, which you guys have heard a little bit about earlier. And that fellowship is what brought me to D.C. in the first place. I worked between the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in a fellowship that was designed around the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force. And that task force is focused on protecting coral reefs around the world. That the John A. Knaus Fellowship is still looking for fellows going forward, and I strongly recommend anybody, once they are in graduate school, to consider the Knaus Fellowship. It was a terrific opportunity and opened many doors and gave me the opportunity to network with a great deal of folks who are really intelligent and really motivated about ocean sciences. My academic experience spanned a bunch of different interests. I got my master's degree from the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, where I studied sandbar shark physiology. And I got that interest in sharks during my year off between graduate and undergraduate school, where I realized at the end of my undergraduate career that I had funding that I received from the Hall Bonner Fellowship to go to graduate school, but that I was going to have a year off before that fellowship came online, and that I had to do something with my free time to keep myself entertained. And I went to South Africa and worked with great whites, and I traveled to Antarctica and did a small science project down there as well. And those opportunities came about just because of conversations I had with other scientists at academic meetings. I found out about the great white shark opportunity because one researcher I was talking to said that he'd gotten spammed from somebody about they were looking for people to come and help chum waters in South Africa, and he had absolutely no interest in it whatsoever. And I asked him to send me the link because I was interested. I followed up on it, and that came to pass. The work in Antarctica came from talking with one of my professors in undergrad, and he had a colleague who was at a different university who was looking for students to come down to the ice with him and work. And I followed up that lead and made that happen as well. And while I was in undergrad and in grad for that matter, I attended several conferences. The ones that were most specific to my interests were the American Society of Limnology and Oceanography and the American Geophysical Union, ASLO and AGU. Those are opportunities for you to get to network with the people that you'll be working with in the future and to find out about the different programs that are going on and the different science that's going on. And I strongly recommend that everybody get out to conferences as often as they can. It's if you can get funding to go, it's a free trip to somewhere in the world, and it's a chance to learn about what's going on in the discipline that you're interested in. I'm going to move on from this slide and talk a bit more about what your experience is and give you some ideas and piggyback on some of the things that have been said earlier that I recommend and suggest that you take a look at. A lot has been talked about graduate funding sources, and many different places have been suggested that you can go to find some, and I figured I'd give you just a handful right off the bat. You've heard a bit about getting to know the different labs that you're going to apply to, and I strongly recommend that. And here I've named some of the big name ones that you've probably heard of and some of the smaller ones that you may not have heard of that all have marine science and environmental science programs at them. The top series are domestic and the lower series are international. If you find something on their websites that's truly of interest to you, you need to start reaching out to the professors as quickly as you can. Get a conversation going with them about what you're interested in. Try and find synergies between your interest and theirs. And once you have that dialogue going, you are taking your first steps into finding your graduate advisor. And you heard a little bit about specific schools that have funds for students to come to them. And I listed at the very bottom a couple of the fellowships that I was aware of. The one from Hampton University is the fellowship program that I took part in. And that fellowship is the Hall Bonner Fellowship, and it'll come back up again later, but I have the link here. And that fellowship funds students to go to the Virginia Institute of Marine Science or the Old Dominion University to conduct their work. You've heard a whole lot about the different sources of graduate funding, and NSF being the top one that everybody talks about. One thing that hasn't been said that I would recommend, the award search database. Because NSF is a federal agency, any awards that are made are public record. So you can go on to any scientist who's been funded by NSF recently or in the past and find out about what the research is that they've been funded to do. And what I specifically recommend that you do is once you found somebody who you're interested in, look them up in the award search database and find out if they've got funding. And another way you can go about it is to go straight to the award search database and find out who's got funding in the disciplines that you're interested in. And you can find out who got funded, let's say in 2011, and if they've got $2 or $3 million worth of funding, there's a good likelihood that they're in a position to take on graduate students over the long haul, and that's exactly what you would be looking for. The Foster Scholarship has been talked about. Another one that hasn't, is the EPA STAR and GROW Fellowship. For those of you still in undergrad, the EPA STAR undergraduate program will pay for the second 2 years of your undergraduate education. You have to apply for it in sophomore year, and it'll pay for junior and senior, and that is what I took part in. But there's also a graduate fellowship that pays, I don't know the specifics, but I would strongly recommend you take a look at it. But it pays, I think, to 3 years of graduate funding as well as a stipend. The NASA program has been discussed a little bit. The National Defense Science and Engineering Fellowship is another one that I would recommend you take a look at. And the National Academies also has fellowships for graduate students. We talked a little bit about internships and fellowships. You've heard about RUs. There are RUs that go across many different universities, and I would take a look at the programs that are of interest to you. Those of you still in undergrad, you should take a look because it is a great way to have a really fun summer. The EPA STAR and GROW Fellowship I talked about. The Student Conservation Association offers kind of more holistic funding sources. I did work with them on the Great Lakes during my undergraduate career. And IODP, the International Ocean Drilling Program, which is what I worked with when I was at NSF, they also have funds to have students come out on the ship. And I talked a little bit about the Knauss Marine Policy Fellowship is what I did that brought me to DC, but I'll go a little bit more into detail there. That fellowship is designed for students who are in graduate school, and they can be an MS, PhD, or getting a JD. And it brings them to DC for a one-year fellowship. They can come at any point in their career. It doesn't have to be at the end of their time in grad school. They come for 1 year and they get placed either on Capitol Hill or in an executive branch office such as NOAA or EPA. The NSF has fellows as well, and you get an experience. You get to make connections that you would not have made any other way, and it's a great thing to take back with you to your university if you're still working on your degree, or it's a great way to end your degree and make the first steps into your professional career. And the last one on here is the Sea Education Association. They have scholarships to go out on their ship, or you can just go out as a regular paying student, and it's one semester of I would recommend sophomore, junior year, but you can do it at any point in your career. At any point in your undergraduate career. And you get to get hands-on science done. You get to work in Woods Hole for 6 to 8 weeks, and the credits that you earn on that in that program are fully transferable and transfer through Boston University, which is accredited across the entire nation. A couple of things just to keep in mind that are a little bit kind of on the outskirts. AmeriCorps and Peace Corps have opportunities for you once you get out of your degree. If graduate school isn't what you want to do immediately after, I strongly recommend taking a look at those two programs. And they also have opportunities within at least Peace Corps and I think AmeriCorps as well to pay off student loans. So I would strongly recommend taking a look at those as well. And I talked a little bit about conference attendance earlier. This is just a list of a couple of conferences that there are. There are many, many conferences, and I strongly recommend you take a look at them and get to know the scientists in the discipline that you're interested in and to find out what science is going on. And this is my last slide. I will leave you with the word network. Your career is going to be made by getting to know people, and opportunities and doors will open the more people you know and the more people who respect the work that you do. You need to get out there early and often and have a smile on your face and just get to chatting with people about what excites you, because more than likely there's something that excites them too, and you guys can have a great conversation about it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Leonard. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Carla, who is going to field some questions that she's received.
So the first question I have is that was actually dropped in before the webinar, so there may have been things that were discussed that answer it. But the first question is that the person asking has heard about the advantages of securing funding when applying to PhD programs, but there doesn't seem to be too many pre-doctoral fellowships out there. Are there any tips about getting any of those? Would be great.
There are certainly some fellowships that you can apply for when you're a senior undergrad. So the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship is an example of that. And Chris, do you have other examples off the top of my head?
Oh, that you would apply for it while you're still an undergrad?
As a senior undergrad? It sounded like the question was, if you're a senior undergrad, what can you apply to?
Well, I mean, it's several, and not off the top of my head, of course, I'm blanking, but I mean several of the programs that bridge that some of the things that Leonard and examples that Melanie brought up. Even the NASA Graduate Student Researchers Program is available as you're making that transition as well, correct?
Great.
That's correct. The Hall Bonner Fellowship that I mentioned, that's available to students interested in working at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science and ODU, those are timed for folks who are finishing up their undergrad work, so that is timed for folks in their senior year. The links to the University of North Carolina Wilmington Biology and Marine Biology programs, they also have several fellowships that are timed for senior year.
Great.
Also, I wanted to chime in on that as well. There is also another avenue. If you are thinking about a PhD or doctorate program, you may want to try a bridge to doctorate program. And there are, if you just simply type in bridge to doctorate and your field of interest, you will probably find quite a few programs that are out there like that. Folks are realizing the need for either undergraduates as well as master's students to kind of figure that out and determine, if they really want to pursue a PhD. So that's also an option as well.
Great. I've got two questions pending on kind of the same topic. So one of them is a person that's a fourth-year undergrad interested in PhD programs, but in terms of applications, wanted to know how specific that you would advise that they are in describing their research interests. They have a lot of different interests or general interests and not sure how specific to get. And then the second question that's very similar to that is, I'm struggling to find a research field, and the areas I'm interested in are so contrasting that I need to decide to be able to apply. Any advice for, how to make that decision or how general or specific to be. So I know it's a mouthful, but it's kind of that general struggle to choose a field to apply to.
I'll take the first stab at that one. I would suggest being honest. When it comes to writing any kind of letter or essay, be honest in what it is you want out of the program you're applying to. Everybody realizes that this world has a lot to offer, and people's expectations and interests will be diverse. Being diverse can be a very good thing. What you need to do is explain in that essay how your divergent interests combine to make you happy, and what it is about those interests that gets you excited, and what you're going to do in whatever program it is you're writing to, what it is you're going to do there, and focus that way. I would suggest.
Great. Does anybody have anything else to add on that? I think that's a great piece of advice.
I'd like to add something as well.
Sure, Melanie, go ahead.
This is to address the first part of the question, which is, I believe, how detailed do you need to be in terms of your application when applying to a doctorate program? It's really unlike applying to a master's program where you're typically applying in a master's program and the funding is there and you are really following the research interests of the advisor. And so the difference in that when applying to a doctoral program is that you really have sometimes a clear definition of the topics or field that you'd like to work in, and they're looking for you to have some basic knowledge and understanding, or at least have some questions that you would like to answer in regard to that topic, as well as have, talk to them, and talk to others in the field so you can get an idea for where that field of science is going. So I'm just giving a comparison to master's versus PhD application.
Great. All right. I have another question, which is if you wait a year or two to apply to graduate school after finishing your undergrad, does that affect your funding amounts or chances of success at all?
I would say no. I think that taking some time off is really good and very well respected. It gives you an opportunity to put some other things on your CV or resume, and it gives you a chance to find focus. And I don't think anybody would look down on that. The only caveat to that is you're out of school, and getting to the point where you're going to go back to taking the GREs can be complicated, but if you take care of that just fine, then I think you'd be fine taking time off.
Mm-hmm. And kind of a slightly related yet more specific question is, if you participate in programs like Beast Corps or AmeriCorps, would it be detrimental for your chances of getting some of that NSF funding, given that NSF gives priority to undergrads?
For one, I didn't realize that they gave priority to undergrads. The GRF, I don't think does, but I could be wrong on that.
I don't think they do. I think you are eligible to apply in the senior year of your undergraduate year as well as the first 2 years in your graduate program. But it doesn't, so maybe that might be the only deficit because it does give that allowance for that, but you still have the 2 years within the start of a graduate program to apply. So I wouldn't look at that as a negative. And even if you apply in your senior year and you plan on doing something else and you're taking some time off, you can defer at least for a year. So you might want to consider applying anyways in your senior year, get that under your belt for experience and get the reviews, and then defer or apply again when you're back.
Yeah, and at least for the GRF, I think the panels for that fellowship can be very strict and very, very competitive. And having some time off, coming back, knowing what you want, and being able to write a proposal that is really well thought out and convincing, I think time off would only help to do that, because it'll give you a chance to develop your own desires on what you want to do with your project.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly if you continue to work to maintain your connections with, your colleagues and your faculty members, and perhaps attend some of the conferences that Leonard mentioned. I think a lot of students take time off, and usually it really is beneficial.
Great. Another question is, are there any funding opportunities that are specifically for single parents interested in attending graduate school?
Wow. I don't think I've ever had that question before, to be honest. But certainly, there are specific. What I always tell people is put it all in a search. There's so many different niche scholarships or fellowships out there to definitely go that route. But there are certainly ones for women specifically. It really just behooves you to do as many searches as you can.
Mm-hmm. Another question is, how much time prior to the grad school application deadline should be taken to work on the application? How long does it take typically? And that may, do you want to bring up that timeline maybe, Liv?
Yeah, sure. I think we often tell students to think of it as an extra course in terms of the amount of work.
Saying is taking the full semester of that, where allowing the time of that, the fall semester of your senior year to really focus on working on all of the components.
And some components of it are a little bit, like for instance, letters of recommendation. It's not that you're sitting down and working, for 3 months straight on letters of recommendation, but it's that you need to talk with your professor, and then they need to have some time, and then you may need to remind them, and then you need to make sure it gets submitted. And so all that time adds up. It's really, you can't kind of do it in a week or something.
Another question related to timing is whether or not you should apply to the master program of interest first or work with the funding application first before getting into grad school.
Can you repeat that?
I think you'll find you'll
end
up
doing
it simultaneously.
Yeah, simultaneously, yeah. So it's applying to the actual program and versus applying for external funding, one before the other or simultaneously.
Oh, absolutely simultaneously. If you are honored to have to make the choice between two places that want to pay for you to come to them, that's wonderful. You'd rather be in that position than the position of not having either.
Right. Okay. I've got one question about one of this. Okay, sorry. The next question is, can you defer portable funding grants if you take a year off?
Some you can and some you can't. You really just have to look at the specifics of each one.
Okay. And we had a couple of questions about a particular fellowship that was shown during in the concept map, but it may be easiest to just kind of send the map out for people to explore all of those resources. Just to look at the NASA one that was shown by Chris in the middle, but we can. I think that everybody would love to see the resources themselves, so maybe we can do that. I don't have any other current pending questions in the Q&A, so thank you guys so much for staying on a little bit longer to get those questions answered. I think you guys did a great job of kind of tag teaming the results. Oops, one more. If these programs are so competitive, what's the best way to stand out? Either a personal statement, references, what's that one way to make an impression? I think that's a good question to end on.
All of those points where you really have to. I mean, I know that they say a lot of also taking into consideration the broader impacts of who you are and what you're bringing to the greater scientific world in your research. But I guess I'd like to lob that to Leonard or Melanie, because they always, all of the components are so important.
I would agree. I think that all of the components are extremely important, and students that are applying to these really competitive programs, they really have, nailed all of those components. But one of the things that I can recommend in standing out is to really, if you're passionate about the type of research that you would like to do, or the field of study that you would like to go into, be able to show that dedication through your application, through internships, volunteerism, workshops, being involved in the community, for example, conferences, and also being a part of any organizations and being on their boards. Really show that you're dedicated to improving the science in the field that you're working in. And I tell you, folks are always really impressed with that, because they know the dedication that you have to have and the amount of time that it takes to be involved in those types of activities, as well as a really good personal statement. So.